Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Hey, this one is okay. So sometimes I have some insecurities. I don't believe it or not, because I work with individuals. Some of them have big businesses, some of them don't. But it's been a minute since I've stepped into like a corporate space. I was in a corporate, shall we say, environment most of last year, but by no means was it corporate. They were producing ethanogenic medicines and taking them through clinical trials. But we were in a corporate park. Everyone had their offices. People were smart casual. There was a hierarchy. It was all the things I talk about. Like, we all just bring what we've learned throughout our professional careers. And even when we're trying to do something completely different and truly disrupt industries, we still do what we know, right? So every now and again, I get a little like, well, maybe you don't know what you're talking about anymore, BZ. So I was doing some research. And should that be my word of 2025? I think so. Anywho, workplace jargon, like, what was I? Oh, quiet quitting, I think is what I was talking about. I've been on a trip kind of looking around, trying to figure out what happened to careers and what happened to retirement and what happened to security. And this, I know, was inspired by the fact that I just rented a new home and they wanted a paycheck to prove that I could pay rent. And I was like, I can prove I can pay rent in different ways than a paycheck. And it's so interesting to me that you feel like that's the security upon which, like, I don't know if you've been paying any attention to how many people have lost their jobs just in the last couple months. It is, well, I'm recording this in April of 2025. Not sure when you're watching this, but a job by no means implies any level of security these days. In fact, I would suggest it's probably the least secure because you've put all of your eggs in somebody else's basket. No offense if you're gainfully employed. Congratulations. So, anywho, one of my favorite ways to kind of do some social listening is to see, like, what are the kids saying these days, and like, what are the catchphrases. And the internet is a really, really great place to kind of do this social listening. And I think, what did I wanted to use quiet quitting and see if like people are even saying that anymore. And they are not, because things have gotten ugly out there. So we're going to go through some of this jargon because it is multiplying faster than you can say quiet quitting or pivot. We've got some terms that are, quite frankly, a little aggressive. I was upset by the end of this investigation. But what I've always found fascinating about these colloquialisms is they're so demonstrative of what is happening like behind the curtain, right? And so these particular workplace trends are 100% indicative of just how disillusioned and burnt out we all are. That's not news. But I think what they're really showing is not just trends or hashtags, but symptoms, and symptoms of a system that is so out of sync with the people within it that we're killing our creativity, our connection, and our growth. And again, not news. I'm aware. But what I want to do today is unmask these trends and how they are reflecting a deep dysfunction in the way we're approaching work. Talk about a couple of different examples that actually show how some of your more stereotypical workplaces, shall we say, are trying at least to rewrite the rules. And then talk about like 3 things that you can potentially try to play with these concepts, or at least bring some attention to them, especially if you're leading or building or hosting a quote unquote workspace, right? So firstly, let's just talk about these buzz terms, right? Because they aren't just trending, they are signaling collapse. So the one that is replacing quiet quitting that like really kind of slapped me around was resenteeism. So this isn't just someone like turning their Zoom camera off. This is when employees stay in jobs they actively hate because they can't afford to leave. And this isn't just disengagement in disguise. And as a business owner, like, this is where some hypervigilance is probably pretty useful, because this will poison your business. And what's happening is these people aren't, again, quietly quitting and just staying in a role and doing the bare minimum. They are actively hating on and gossiping, criticizing, underperforming in a role because they hate it. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of energy to manage. Resenteeism, rage applying. So this is when you have people on your team literally applying for jobs while their camera is off on that Zoom call. So what people are doing to kind of backlash against a hard conversation, a change in direction they're not a big a fan of, but they're just basically blanket applying to different job opportunities. And I think what's interesting about this one as well, and something that's kind of new, or I don't think it's kind of new, but now that rage applying is a trend, people are also seeing all of the jobs that are posted, right? So they're becoming brutally aware that you're hiring for their role. They're like, fuck you, I'm applying for other jobs, kind of knee-jerk reaction. So this is what I'm saying. Like, these terms, resenteeism and rage applying, are really, really symptomatic of what's going on behind the scenes. Lazy girl jobs. So this is where people are very purposefully, what do we call it when you're punching below your weight? Like, you're just getting a fucking job, ideally remote, ideally flexible schedule, probably pretty low stress, because people don't care anymore. This isn't about being lazy. This is like an active rebellion against the like hustle harder, corporate ladder climbing last 200 years of fucking career building. People are like, fuck it, I'm going to get a job that requires me to do very little with my brain power or my emotional capacity. This is people saying, I prefer freedom and self-respect than a treadmill with a title. Career cushioning. This is, again, when employees are spending their job time proactively seeking new jobs and continually updating their professional profiles, safeguarding against potential job loss. So when someone's talking about career cushioning, what they're saying is, I feel very insecure in my role, and I probably need to be looking for new opportunities, even if like I don't have any specific reasons to be doing so. Algorithmic management. Again, very symptomatic. What your team or your workplace or your peers have realized is that it's not a human that is collating data and measuring it. It is an AI agent or an algorithm. And these are pretty easy to game. And so by simply ticking the right boxes, I have a lot of people who are kind of trying to wonder, like, how do we create a dashboard essentially? But how do I have oversight over my business as it scales? And it's not too hard to imagine that by simply ticking the right boxes, you would indicate that you're on track for whatever metrics you are being measured by, right? So like, as an example, I watch one of my friends move their mouse every 90 seconds because one of her metrics is like, you're on your computer, they're a remote worker. You could game that pretty easily. You know what I mean? I've seen people on hikes with their Slack open. Like, it's, again, depending on the metrics that are being measured, algorithmic management is not a very inspired way of leading, nor getting buy-in and engagement from your team. Ambidextrous leadership. I thought this one was really interesting. So because we're all recognizing this other laundry list of like really stark terminology and jargon that's out there, there's this trend in leadership to be holistic, woke. You're going on IR retreats with your C-suite, and also you're completely invested in exploitative activities. So you're refining for efficiency and output and productivity, but you're talking about innovation and psychological safety. The point being, ambidextrous leadership is kind of what another thing that I talk a lot about. Like in business, our culture can very quickly become diluted if we're just using the trending vocabulary and there is no walk behind our talk. That's what ambidextrous leadership is about. It's like code changing. Like I'm woke and I'm sensitive and I'm empathetic, but also I need you here till 9 o'clock every night. And we've got a project that needs to get done and the client pushed back and I have no boundaries. So this falls on you. I'm going to the golf course. Neat. Ambidextrous leader. Lastly, glossing. Glossing being a toxic workplace trend where leaders ignore or downplay issues, leading employees to suppress negative emotions and disengage. So this kind of leads us back up to the beginning, which is resenteeism. These trends, these terms, this jargon is the canary in the coal mine. These are emotional smoke signals, and they're not just employee problems. They are signals for entrepreneurs and anybody building business in the 21st century. If we don't build differently, if we don't truly show up differently, if we don't embody a new way of working with each other and leading, we will become irrelevant, just like these trending terms. We are responsible for changing the systems. And I just want to call out, like, I choose words carefully when I'm talking to you. And I choose polarizing words purposefully. When I first started working with artists and musicians, I talked about their creative output as a product, and it fucked every single one of them off. They don't want to think about their art as a product. None of us do. But here's the thing. We're making something and selling it. 9 times out of 10, if you hit me up for management as an artist, I would tell you, you don't want to sell your art, my friend. You want to make art because you love it. That's completely different. If you want to take yourself and your work seriously, we can start a business where we sell products. Products are informed by a lot more than just your creativity and your timeline. It's different. Now I'm depending on you. You are depending on me. We're in relationship with each other. We need systems. We need brands. We need a voice. We need culture. We need KPIs and PIPs and contracts. Like, we need all of these triggering words because, firstly, they only mean what we need them or want them to mean. And if you're triggered by it, the question then becomes why. Because I'm pretty sure if you want me to manage your business and therefore ensure that your products are getting sold, aka tickets to your shows or paintings on the wall or followers on your Facebook, those are all KPIs, my friend. And if I don't perform, firstly, you're going to put me on a performance improvement plan, aka we're going to have a little talk. But secondly, I'm going to be in breach of contract, which is the promises that we made with each other. Now, all of these things are perfectly fine. They have a bad rap because some old, gross, probably white, probably man made it yuck because he wasn't walking the walk. And all of these things felt productivity, they felt exploitative, right? So as a builder, as a creator, I am pointing at you if you were just watching. I'm calling you the fuck out. You have these opportunities to reclaim this terminology and use whatever the fuck words you want, my friend. Please, please. It's never for me to tell you, right? We know that. But there are ways in which I believe we each work best. And until like telepathy tapes and telekinesis come on board and we're all able to non-verbally communicate with each other, we're going to have to use our big people words, okay? And it's useful to ensure that like we're talking about the same thing, even we're using the same word. But that's actually why I use this corporate terminology, because I can immediately see the reaction in somebody. And I know that a lot of the ways that I talk about things is cringeworthy as fuck. That's not my problem, my friend. We know my definition of business is taking things seriously, taking your passion and your creativity and your way of being seriously. You are investing in you, right? So reclaim any words your boss used that made you cringe, or use whatever words you want. It's the energy behind the action that matters. It's the energy that makes the difference. And it's your first cue to know if you're headed down a path towards a desired destination or simply repeating default tendencies. Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? You choose. So when we hear these terms like ambidextrous leadership or rage applying, we have to ask what's actually broken. Modern business, 21st century business, still runs on industrial era operating systems. These are systems that were created 200 years ago now. Hierarchy, output, and relentless scale were the drivers. This industrial was factories, right? It was when we realized that we're not just selling one thing to one person, we're selling one thing to thousands, if not millions, if not billions of people. So the problem isn't just that nobody wants to work. That's actually not fucking true. And I can tell this is a lot of my experiences are anecdotal for sure. But having let a handful of families and family units, quote unquote, live for free has absolutely shown me that people want to create an exchange, and they might not have the means to do it in a way that is expected, but by empowering them to figure out what this remuneration looks for, what this particular exchange could look like, firstly is a creative process, secondly has a lot of fucking wounding around it, but third, like, I didn't ask anybody to start paying rent, but people were like, what can we do to show you that we appreciate what we're receiving and we want to ensure that you're receiving as well so that we can keep doing this? And that is an ongoing conversation. And it's different for each one of these different units that are habitating in the spaces that I'm stewarding, right? You're going to hear me belabor this a lot because this is like not only what I've been working on for the last 25 fucking years, but how old am I? It's almost my birthday. Yeah, that's accurate. 25. Like running a 21st century workplace on 19th century rules. We inherited hierarchies, and that stifles creativity. We are output obsessed, which rewards burnout, and our scalability, our growth models ignore rhythms like humans and seasons and cycles. This is the burnout economy, and we've glorified overwork and called it ambition. We've called automation liberating while stripping agency from people, and we've built high performance teams that are suffocating. Like, the smartest people in the world are resenteeism, resenteeizers. They're engaging in resenteeism. That's what I'm trying to say. The collapse isn't coming, it's happening. But the good news is that gives us a space to build something completely fucking different. And that's why you're here. That's why we're having this conversation. So we know that hustle is a virtue is dead. Rest isn't a weakness. Innovation isn't necessarily fast. It is probably pretty chaotic, but should be built on substance, not speed. So Gen Z won't play the old game. Flat out won't do it. Millennials are the resenteers, right? They're the quiet quitters. They ain't down. And quite frankly, if the boomers haven't been laid off or the Gen Xers haven't been fired as middle management, they are burning out behind their beautifully polished desks. I promise you, you can be successful doing it your way. That's what these last few episodes have really been trying to hammer in. There are old ways of doing things, and we're all going to show up with that programming. Your way of doing things gets to be right in your own kingdom, in your own space, as the royalty within which you are showing up and creating. How you do that is your secret sauce. And you were perfectly entitled and deserving and have full permission to do it however the fuck you want, but you got to figure out what that looks like, right? And you don't have to know what you want to do. You don't have to have all of the answers. You don't have to have any answers. It gets to be play. I guess the only thing I'm asking is, do you want to try? In order to, I think, figure this out, at least enough to take the next few steps, just ask yourself, what would success feel like? What would success look like? For me, for the most part, it's actually just doing the dang thing. That's why things get so fucking messy and sloppy and like looking at notes and different cameras and color grade, like, because I would rather do it and then go, okay, here's where I think where it could be done better. My definition of success is it got done. I fulfilled the promise to myself. And now I'm like, and I'm trying a little bit harder and making it a little bit better each dang time, right? What's your definition of success? It might be 20 hours of work a week and a leaner lifestyle. It might mean working 100 hours a week because you are completely obsessed with what you do. And in fact, what you do is your lifestyle. For a lot of us business owners, work is personal because I've created my entire life around what I want to take seriously. And, I've had a lot of people being like, you're so busy. And it's like, I'm just really engaged with what I do. I'm kind of thinking about it all the time. I have a few different things that I do because I like that. I like that switch. I like being able to focus on different things. That's how I work best. That might not even be how I work best. In fact, I often wonder what would happen if I just focused on one thing, but I guess that's an experiment I could play out. Anywho, define what success means. It's going to be huge for creating and building in this current space within which we all find ourselves. I wanted to talk about a couple different examples, again, on kind of a grander scale, just to show that you can do this at scale. It's a lot easier when we talk about it in terms of just one person or potentially one person in a very small ecosystem within which they are operating. But are you familiar with Atlassian? So if you're in tech, the answer is yes. If not, they're a global software. I feel like that underestimates, that doesn't capture Atlassian's impact in terms of technology, but just Google them, look it up. In 2020, they launched Team Anywhere, a permanent distributed work model that goes beyond remote work. They didn't just move online, they re-engineered their culture. So there were no mandated meetings. There were focus days with 0 calls. They did async first communication and rituals that nurtured connection, not performance. Employee engagement stayed high, attrition stayed low, and creativity didn't just survive, it exploded. So what they realized was by enabling their people to be autonomous, focused, and communicate in ways that supported themselves, aka you don't have to respond to an email within an hour, you don't have to be on Slack 24/7. They thrived. Their people thrived in that ecosystem. They stopped managing time and they started betting on trust, as in, we trust you to do your jobs. You trust us to create an ecosystem within which you can succeed. And it was wildly successful. Another tech company, but again, another absolute giant. And I think the other reason the tech examples are relevant is just because of the data used that they were able to track and measure these performance results, right? So Microsoft trialed in Japan a 4-day work week because we know culturally about Japan's work ethic, right? So they actually trialed this in a place where it would probably have been harder to conform to this updated cultural experiment than, say, in somewhere like Europe that has a much shorter work week, right? So they went 4 work days a week. Meetings were capped at 30 minutes. And again, they focused on energy, not effort. What they realized is productivity rose by 40%, electricity usage fell by 23%, and 92% of employees said they preferred it. Burnout doesn't have to scale as you grow. So the employees preferred it and they were more productive and costs went down. That is parabolic in terms of a company's success. If you're assuming that profitability and employee engagement are key metrics, right? What they derived from this experiment is that well-rested minds make better decisions faster. That was their definition of success. These companies didn't tune up their engines. They redesigned the machine. They made how people feel, not just how they perform, but how they feel their business strategy. And it's working. So again, in industries where I think we can assume people are treated like automatons, we have two major players who flipped that model on its head and said, we're going to try to do things differently, walk the walk, so that we don't have rage applying and ambidextrous leadership and resenteeism being thrown around on our Slack channels, right? We associate momentum with progress. That's one of the programs we're bringing with us. But most of your strategic moves will happen in the stillness. When you pause long enough to see what's actually happening beneath the surface, when you listen to these terms and not just throw them into your posts to hop on some trend and get more optics, but to go, wow, why the fuck would somebody want to participate in a lazy girl job? Like, why am I taking time to cushion this career? Or why are people saying I'm glossing as a leader? Strategic intuition outperforms brute force decision making in high uncertainty periods. And successful founders take this quote unquote white space to unlock direction. This is from Y Combinator. If you know, you know. But by pausing with intention and recognizing patterns, we can ask ourselves, what is the core issue at hand? What's the pivot? Chose that one on purpose. That'll course correct from does it feel good to, or does it feel bad to does it feel good, right? Magnetism beats management. This is that level 5 leadership, my friend, that level 6 leadership. You don't have to push your team or your customers, clients, buyers, or your stakeholders and board. Your energy can pull them in. Modern leadership is less about command. I think Seth Godin and Tim Ferriss were discussing this exact concept. And Seth Godin said, a good leader never tells somebody what to do. It's interesting, isn't it? When we communicate with creative conviction, it's that true belief in this moment and in myself that what I am saying is impactful and important and is only as real as right now. I'm so open, not just to feedback, but potential change. People follow that purpose, not necessarily the process. And employee loyalty spikes when leaders communicate belief, not just deadlines. When you contextualize things, when you help people understand why this matters, the part they are playing, and potentially how that might even affect everyone else that's working on this particular project, you're not going to get missed deadlines. Or if you do, it's because there was something that needed to, dare I say, pivot. Lastly, the breakdown can actually be the breakthrough. When something stops working, whether it's your offer, your organizational chart, your identity, it's not a failure, it's just feedback. And your ability to decode this information determines how fast you will evolve. So let's dismantle not just these trending terms or the systems within which they were invented, but let's just recognize what doesn't fit any longer and put on an entirely new outfit. The empire is crumbling, but you're not here to salvage it. You're here to build what's next with vision, with values, and with people that are evolving with you, that are in this ecosystem to play and to experiment and to thrive. So, what part of your work or your business do you need to burn down? And upon the smoldering ashes, rebuild something that doesn't just take its place, but inspires you to keep building, to keep trying, to keep envisioning what's possible, and then adding a whole nother layer to that, right? So I'd love to hear from you. I'd love for you to share this, like it, comment on it, give me feedback, ask me questions that I can answer in future episodes. And yeah, I'll see you on the flip side.